Hello, my name is Algirdas Paleckis. I am from Lithuania. I want to present you several videos about our country, about our region. As you know, Lithuania is in the northeast of Europe, and also in the region where we have currently many tensions linked to the war in Ukraine. I'm a journalist, a politician, and also a political prisoner, which the latter I would describe to you a bit later about my experience in Lithuanian prison. But today I would like to present to you the situation in my country, in Lithuania and in the region from the geopolitical point of view. I also represent the political movement, the Dawn of Justice, which is a left-wing movement in Lithuania, which is being created now, although authorities in Lithuania want to prohibit, want to stop our creation, but the process is still going on. And in this series of videos, I would also like to present to you not only points of view of our movement, but also to describe you the current situation in the region. Because in the mainstream media, mainly English-speaking world media, in the mainstream media of the Western world, it is presented as if everybody in our region, or not, if not everybody, then the majority of inhabitants in the region do support our government, as if the majority of Lithuanians are pro-liberal, pro-NATO, etc., pro-Americans, which is not true. And I will show you. So I would start by saying that in general, the Eastern Europe is a very complicated region historically. Why? And by the way, I mean part of it, mainly which I know best, which is starting from Estonia in the north down via Latvia, Lithuania, and Poland. This is a very specific region. Maybe you could also add to it Czech Republic and Slovakia, to some extent Belarus. And this is a very complicated region because it has always been between the East and the West. This region experienced both huge influences from both the West and the East. And it can also be regarded historically by the influence of Catholicism and Protestantism and the Orthodox Church, which also shaped our culture to a great extent. Estonia and the bigger part of Latvia are Protestants, but already in Latvia we start to see Catholics and Orthodox, Russian Orthodox. Well, the majority in Lithuania are Catholic, from Catholic, like in Poland. And this also shows that historically we had these influences. But, of course, many years in the course of our history, we were part of Russia. Previously, then the part of the Soviet Union. Well, Poland was, of course, not, but it was in the Soviet bloc. What happened 30 years ago, roughly 30 years ago? As you know, the Soviet Union disintegrated, and there was a chance back in 1989, in 1990s, there was a great chance of peace, and there were lots of promises of future prosperity. As I said, the Soviet Union disintegrated, and on its territory, independent, separate states emerged. Independent, you can call them. Although, of course, in this world, to be independent is quite a relative formula. to my mind at least, especially for the smaller countries. I would remind you that Lithuania doesn't have even 3 million people. It has 2.5 roughly million. Latvia has even less. So we had a chance in this region for a new development 30 years ago. But what happened? Our analysis in our movement, the Dawn of Justice, which is a left-wing movement, our analysis is the following. The Baltic countries, Lithuania in particular, started to pursue a very pro-liberal policies in each sector of our life. It was also a policy it was also a pro-American policy, pro-NATO policy. And instead of creating a common security structures in this region, instead of trying to build a confidence-building measures between various countries, starting from Poland in the west to Russia in the east, of course, including Belarus and Ukraine, instead of creating common security structures, or at least instead of using the existing security bodies like OSCE, Organization for Security in Europe and Cooperation in Europe, instead of that, United States started to push for the NATO enlargement back in early 1990s. What did it mean to push NATO enlargement at that period? It meant that our countries became highly dependent on United States. Our elites started to collaborate with American elites in their pro-liberal economic policies, privatization, you know, this everything was privatized, including the state, the strategic state enterprises. And we lost the chance of building a confidence-based policy with our eastern neighbors, Belarus and Russia. More and more NATO troops started to appear in this region. At first, like visitors, like instructors, like some, I don't know, trainers. But then we were admitted, we were, I would say, pushed into NATO, we were incorporated into NATO in 2004. By the way, it was done without any referenda. I speak now about Lithuanian case. It was in breach with our constitution, because to be part of the NATO bloc, this is a very important strategic question, which, according to constitution, should have been presented to the voters in the referenda. But no referenda was organized. No. It was only a decision of the parliament, of the Lithuanian parliament and of the government. And it was in breach of the constitution. And why was it done? It was done because at the time the government was not sure about Lithuania's population support for NATO membership. It had surveys, it had opinion polls which showed that quite a big part of Lithuanians do not support NATO membership. But it was on purpose ignored, and we were pushed into that bloc. What happened afterwards, after 2004? Because at that year also Latvia and Estonia joined NATO. Poland joined NATO several years earlier. We lost this chance, which I just told you, that we could have had a neutral big neutral region. We had, by the way, close to us examples of Finland, which was and is a neutral country, and it is a prosperous country, by the way. Our analysis in our movement, in our left-wing movement, the Dawn of Justice, is that the region of Eastern Europe should have remained neutral. Why? Very simple. Because history shows that in this region, if any bloc, be it a Western bloc or the Eastern bloc, starts to dominate, if in this region we have the confrontation, or I would say the meeting of two military blocs, if they meet in our region, of course. And when they meet, immediately tensions rise. They rise immediately because, quite naturally, these are military blocs. So, and the example of Ukraine just proves what I have just said. Ukraine was also in the plans of NATO, a future NATO country. And steps have been taken quite many years ago to start to integrate bit by bit even Ukraine into NATO. And this came to the so-called red lines for Russia. Because just imagine if Russia started to create its military bases in Mexico, or if Russia started to create its military bases in Canada. Just imagine what would be the reaction of Washington, of the United States. And accordingly, if United States started to send NATO instructors to Ukraine, started to send NATO equipment, military equipment to Ukraine, which it did, of course, Russia reacted. So this short video, the first in the series of video, is supposed to show you the approach of quite a lot of Lithuanians to this problem, which we now have in Eastern Europe, and specifically in its northern part, starting from Poland upwards to Estonia. Of course, we are close to Belarus and Ukraine as well. I just wanted to show you and to tell you that we should not believe the mainstream Western media when they cover the reactions to the war in Ukraine from our countries. Because this government which we have now is a strictly pro-NATO government and pro-American government. And of course, when this media shows you its approach, the approach of the government, it is basically the approach of the United States. Whereas the population, the Lithuanian population, has a variety of views. Of course, nobody is in favor of war. But there are lots of people in our region who question, could we avoid war? What could have been done to avoid this war? And our analysis in the movement, in the left-wing movement, the Dawn of Justice, is that the NATO enlargement and pro-American policies are the main reasons of this conflict which is taking place now in the territory of Ukraine. I think the future of Eastern Europe lies in neutrality. As long as we will remain NATO members, we will always have tensions with our eastern neighbors, like Belarus, like Russia. As long as NATO will be in this territory, as long we will have tensions. That was the first topic in the series of videos from our social and left-wing political movement, Dawn of Justice. And I had an honor to represent here this movement. And if you will be interested, we will prepare for you some other videos which will show you the also other sides of life in this part of Europe, namely economic side, human rights aspects, democracy aspects, because we do have problems with all these topics which I mentioned. And for now, I thank you for your attention and hope to see you soon again. Thank you.